That's right.
Okay, we are up and running on the YouTube. So you might see it, it might be in your top corner and let you know that it is streaming on
Yes,
YouTube.
I saw. Mhm.
Um, we expect people to start coming on like around 4. Um, just be saying hi for a good minute, couple minutes to get started like around 4:03, 4:04 with the program. Um, so yeah, I'll
So,
let you know how many people we got coming in as it starts
so
going.
Chris, can we watch YouTube while we're
You
on this Zoom?
you can, as long as you don't have the audio on
On, right?
as you're doing.
Okay, I'll watch it later.
Okay. 3:59. So everybody gets like a notification at 4 o'clock. Oh, and it's starting to come in already. So,
Okay.
and they can chat on the YouTube, but it takes a little bit of time for it to come in. So
Hmm.
if people have some, shout outs or whatnot, if we're in a moment where we can do that, I'll try to acknowledge folks as we get started.
Hmm.
Um, but so happy for the many people who could be with us today. Today is May 19th, 2020. You are hanging with the Paul Robeson House and Museum here for a special edition program called To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. A celebration of 2020 graduates, Black graduates worldwide, and also a special tribute to a mentee of Paul Robeson. That is Lorraine Hansberry. So we are just getting started here and just getting ramped up. You see a number of people um, in the video that are going to be helping out. And we are so thankful to the many volunteers who chose to be a part of this program today at the Paul Robeson House and Museum in West Philadelphia, located at the corner of 50th and Walnut Streets. We don't do anything alone. Everything that we do is in collaboration with our many fans and many sort of like people who come and study Paul. Not only Paul Robeson, but many of the freedom fighters, his peers, his descendants, his ancestors, come and celebrate Paul Robeson's legacy. So once again, thankful for you all to be with us today. I'm sort of kind of stalling a little bit to give us some time before we go ahead and get started with today's program. The idea is that we're not here that long, really. We want to get in, do a bit of an introduction, bit of a context setting. We'll be on for about an hour. Um, and there's so many amazing events that are happening today. I know many people on our call, we've been talking about all the many different things. The Malcolm X Center and Malcolm X's daughter, Yasir Shabazz, is having an amazing program. I think we're kind of running in parallel with as well, featuring some great folks like Angela Davis. There's so many things, and this is going to be recorded. So for the people who could not watch this at the time that we're doing it live, there'll be another opportunity they can come back to and watch this video. And we'll sit on our YouTube channel where we added a number of subscribers. So without further ado, I really want to, go ahead and get started for today. Once again, my name is Christopher Rogers. I am the program director for the Paul Robeson House and Museum. And I'm so grateful that we were able to have on our call today. And as we all make this transition into virtual engagement, we're able to have on the line our executive director, And tech savvy, my tech savvy elder, Miss Renoka Michael, to be with us this afternoon. And she's going to give the introduction, the real introduction about who we are and what we do. So without further ado, I want to throw it to Miss Renoka Michael, who can lead us today. For everyone else who's on the call, if you are familiar with how to use the mute controls, please go ahead and do so. If not, I'll be probably doing some stuff on my side to try to keep the sound together as we go through this program. So without further ado, Miss Renoka Michael.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very, very happy that you joined us this afternoon. But I must say that I'm very happy that our program director, Christopher Rogers, has the real technology behind him. He's teaching me because he was born into it and I'm transitioning into it. But I'm here at the Paul Robeson House through the efforts of our founder, Frances Austin, who asked me to join her at the Paul Robeson House because for all of my life, I knew Paul Robeson. I knew him as my uncle, Paul Robeson. And in fact, I'm just writing some things about the early life that I had in relationship to the family. Paul Robeson was just an outstanding person, as we probably have all read about by now. So I won't go into that right now, but I would encourage you when the occasion comes back around that you come and visit the Paul Robeson House so that you will be able to see not only some of the historical things that we know about him, but also begin to learn some of the personal things about him, especially the time that he spent here in Philadelphia at the house right behind Chris, where he lived for 10 years of his life from 1966 until 1976. For me, he was a man that I greatly admired. And one of the stories that I tell at the house is about my always coming into that front door. And Uncle Paul, if he was downstairs, would always rise and bow to me. Now, think about that. Here I am, a young girl, and he's bowing to me, and instead of me bowing to him. But it was always exciting to see him and have a time that I spent with him. So we're just capturing this afternoon just a piece of what he did. And one of the things that Chris will probably tell you is that uh, Uncle Paul spoke at Hansberry's funeral. Now, many people say that he gave the eulogy, but he did attend and he was a speaker on the program. So, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We might be closed physically, but we are open for activities. And if there are individuals who'd like to share with us in some of our virtual programs, please feel free to join us. You can email us at wphlca@gmail.com, or you can call us at 267 205 9351. Thank you and enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you so much, Miss Renoka, for opening the space for us today. And thank you for really being a guide for us as we, make this transition and stick to our mission of engaging folks around the Robeson history. So this sort of event came to mind as I was sitting with, you may not be able to see it because of how the image is, but I was sitting with Dr. Amani Perry's biography, awarded, like critically acclaimed biography of Lorraine Hansberry, called Looking for Lorraine. And that book was, it came out, I want to say either like late 2018. The Paul Robeson House and Museum took part in a co-sponsored event at the Penn Book Center, which is now called People's Books and Culture at 34th and Sansom, where we were able to bring that book to a lot of our community. And there's the speech in there, "The Nation Needs Your Gifts," which serves as an inspiration for a very good friend of Lorraine Hansberry, Nina Simone's. Nina Simone's "To Be Young, Gifted, and Black." And to be able to like read that speech and come back to it, which was a speech that was made in May 1964, at a time when Lorraine Hansberry was already navigating in illness. It was to United Negro College Fund students. It was the winners of a writing contest, and she was initiating these writers into what the sort of like a literary work, a literary sort of like craft, and what it means and really to be a Black writer. And there's other speeches that she made, one in particular in 1959 called "The Negro Writer and His Roots," where she talks about what it means to be a Black writer and the type of stories that we need to share with the world. And I think that this speech and that speech is like deeply connected with one another, but in a way that she's addressing the younger generation, I think is really perfect. And to make the connection, as Ms. Renoka already sort of mentioned, between Robeson and Lorraine Hansberry, we first sort of like see the connection in the early 50s, where Hansberry is one of the editors for Paul Robeson and Louise Burnham's Freedom newspaper, of which we have like reprinted copies on exhibition at the Paul Robeson House. So she's working for Freedom newspaper. She's also, a story that's captured in Dr. Perry's book is you see a trip to Uruguay that Lorraine takes as a proxy for Paul Robeson. We know his passport has been sort of like taken in 1950 along with Eslanda, his wife. And Lorraine Hansberry becomes a US delegate to go on this trip to Uruguay. And she plays some arranged remarks from Paul Robeson at the conference. And then on her way back, because she told the United States State Department that she was going to Panama on vacation. So when they find out she went where she went, lo and behold, her passport was taken too. So it's like this connection, and it speaks to a lot of like the sort of like the ways the government repression around Black art, Black artists, Black activists of the 50s. And we know that like continues and even have a long history before that into the 20s with like Marcus Garvey, and you go all the way up to like the Black Panthers and talk about J. Edgar Hoover and his like censoring of like just Black activism in general. So there's a deep connection there. And the last thing I'll say about their connection in this moment, Martin Duberman, his biography of Paul Robeson, mentions that at Lorraine Hansberry's funeral, of which Paul spoke, and if you Google the program, you can see the program, which has been digitized by the New York Public Library. So you can see the other number of speakers. But another person who attended that funeral was Malcolm X. And we also know that today is the birthday of Malcolm X. And Malcolm X was there at the funeral when Paul spoke. He had never met Paul Robeson before. And Paulie Jr. was there, Paul Robeson's son. And he wanted to say, I want to meet Paul Robeson. And Paul Jr. would become sort of like the intermediary. So he wanted to set up that session. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that day. And this was January 1965. And unfortunately, we know that Malcolm X is assassinated in that next month in February. So that chance meeting didn't happen, but you see this moment in where Malcolm X is in recognition of who Paul Robeson was, and this sort of like connection that Lorraine Hansberry represents between a generation of 1950s Black communist organizing or communist related organizing and 1960s Black power organizing. And the way that she sort of like embodied those connections and that history and that period really says a lot about her influence and while it like continues to be, you know, felt until today. So that's a little bit about the story. We're so grateful to have on so many different readers that are going to help us walk through this speech today. So I want to begin with a round of introductions. You've already heard from Ms. Renoka Michael. The next person I want to offer the floor is Miss Denise Campbell. Miss Denise Campbell, you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You want me to do start the introduction?
Well, introduction about who you are, where you calling in from, and what made you excited to take part today.
Okay. My name is Denise Campbell. I'm very happy to participate in this project because I think that it's groundbreaking for the Paul Robeson House to continue to thrive in the virtual world. I'm a transplant from New York City, born and raised in Harlem. I've been in Philadelphia, primarily West Philadelphia, for 15 years. And I'm a volunteer at the Paul Robeson House. I came to this project through a invitation from Chris. And I would also add that a book group that I belong to called Robeson Readers, which grew out of the Paul Robeson House as a August Wilson study group. We read Imani Perry's bio, Looking for Lorraine, last year, and it really gave me a broader perspective of who she was and made me even more proud to be a part of this project.
Thank you, Denise. Andrea?
Hello, I'm Andrea Barnes. I am born and raised in Philadelphia. I'm a graduate of Bartram Human Services, which is now Paul Robeson High School. When I was there as Human Services, but now it's Paul Robeson. So I'm from West Philadelphia, went to high school in West Philadelphia. I am an educator. I am currently teaching social studies and science for 4th grade, but I'm going to make my move on to high school next year and teach African American history for 9th graders. I was excited to participate in this because I'm a fan of African American history. I majored in that in college, so I was really excited to be able to teach that for next year. But also, I find this speech very important. It makes some very important facts and brings concepts, even when it talks about how the African American was treated, but also links how the poor whites were treated. And we know historically that has been the bond that our country consistently tries to make sure it doesn't happen. That bond between all of those who are disenfranchised, all of those who struggle economically, because then the real power comes when people unify together. So, and I draw those conclusions from our pride in being young, gifted, and Black, but also very clearly how its democracy was taken from the Blacks and from poor whites.
Thank you. Monica.
Hi, my name is Monica Downing, born and raised in West Philadelphia, and just HBCU graduate, Delaware State University, 1995. And I do a lot of, I wanted to be a part of this because I do a lot of work with young people in underserved communities. And I've done a lot of work with, as part of the West Philadelphia Promise Zone project. And just this whole notion of like young, gifted, and Black, I feel like is something that a lot of our young people don't even like hear about and know about nowadays. So I felt, so that's something that I try to make sure that they know about themselves and the potential that they have. And so that's why I wanted to be a part of this.
Thank you. Michelle and Martine.
Okay. I had to wait for my kid to unmute me. So I'm Michelle Strongfield.
I'm Martine.
Martine Augustine. Martine, I was drawn to this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I'm a transplanted Chicagoan, so I have an affinity for Lorraine Hansberry and her work. I just read the biography recently, Dr. Perry's book, which was awesome. And she's a brand new graduate of Hampton University. And this passage, the passages in here spoke to me. And I wanted to say something very special to her about what it means to be, young, gifted, and Black, because she so very obviously is all those things.
Okay, hi, I'm Martine Augustine. I'm a recent graduate of Hampton University. I received my Bachelor's of Science in Criminal Justice, minor in Criminology, and I'm attending law school in the fall. I thought it was important that I join this because first I was asked to, and then after, just thinking about it and listening to you guys speak, I love to listen to my elders talk about their history in the past and the things they know. So it's just a good thing to be a part of. Thank you.
Awesome, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Raheem. Oh, let me get you unmuted.
Hello, Chris.
Oh,
Yeah, hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Raheem Mohammed. I'm from Washington, D.C. Actually, my siblings and I were all born on the campus of Howard University, but I ended up being a Hampton pirate, and that's something I'm still explaining. But anyway, I'm the founder of the Hometown Treme Leadership Institute here in Washington. We're a youth development organization, and we're celebrating our 25th year. We also produced the Paul Robeson Here I Stand Award Gala here in Washington. Some of our awardees have been Harry Belafonte, Dick Gregory, Judith Jamison, Rita Moreno, and we also commissioned and produced the world's largest mural dedicated to the life and legacy of the great Paul Robeson on the side of our building here in Washington, D.C. And I think the main reason why I wanted to be involved in this project today, certainly I want to help spread the good news about our great Paul Robeson, because I even find some people who graduate from acting school with degrees in fine arts, they've heard only a little bit about Paul Robeson. But more importantly today, I wanted to help celebrate the life and legacy of Lorraine Hansberry, a strong, very talented young woman. And I came up through the Jim Crow, Black Power era. And whenever a Black man was doing something, there was always a Black woman giving him incredibly strong support, which always wasn't reciprocated. And so with this program today, where we can come out and celebrate a strong, gifted, and talented Black woman, then I wanted to lend my support to that. So that's why I'm here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mama Sandy and Sage.
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes, this is Mama Sandy here. I am a Brooklynite, now transported here to Philadelphia. And I also went to Rutgers University and was very strong in the Paul Robeson Center there. However, I didn't get a chance to really understand his value and volume while at the Robeson Center at Rutgers until I came to Philadelphia. One of the other things is that I am a storyteller. And so my life work is sustaining, maintaining, and creating stories about us as a people with a particular interest, as the brother just said, with women who go out and forge our stories. And they don't get a lot of credit for the parts that they have played in every phase of our movement to where we are. So I follow people like Lorraine and Zora and Tony K. Bambara. I just follow those people and I try to emulate their way of speaking in our language so that we understand what's going on and have the courage to say the things that you cannot say on the platform. And those who have used the pen, as their power. So I was interested when, first of all, because it said young, gifted, and Black, number one, and because I am very involved in doing a lot of rites of passage programs for youngsters, but also because it was Lorraine, and particularly because I get a chance to share with my granddaughter in this wonderful, fabulous event. So this is my granddaughter, Sage.
Hi, my name is Sage Davis. I'm 7 years old and I live in Philadelphia. The reason why I came here is because I'm inspired in reading.
Okay. So that's why we're here.
Oh, that was great. That was great. Thank you, Sage, for being here and being so brave to take part in this experience with us. I'm waiting to listen. And last but not least, someone who's taught me so much about doing this virtual transition. Tamara Anderson, you there?
Let me unmute myself so I don't embarrass myself. I've been doing it. So I'm excited to be here. For one, I'm also a former Chicagoan, and actually Lorraine's family lives on the very same street that I had, me and my mom moved to our second apartment right there on 59th and Calumet, which is one of the kitchenettes that she, her family owned and used to live at. And of course, I see you clapping down there. I also grew up right there by the original White Castles. It's still there on 79th Street in Chatham, right underneath the viaduct where nobody, takes that toll road except for tourists, because we all know we can get to Indiana for free from Chicago. And I'm also a professional artist. And so I grew up really like Lorraine Hansberry. One of the very first plays I ever read outside of Race in the Sun was The Sign in Sidney Bernstein's Window by her, which is a play that's really underdone. It actually featured Rita Moreno in one of the leading roles. And it was so amazing to read Imani Perry's just amazing work and deep description. She is an artist and an activist. Like, even some of the conversations and side eyes that she would give Bobby Kennedy in actual meetings is something that's not always talked about, or the beautiful friendship she had with James Baldwin, and just the amazing sisterhood between her and Nina. And of course, not to date myself, but we sang Young, Gifted, and Black for my 8th grade graduation too. Like, that was the song. Because we were like, ain't nobody gonna sing Lean on Me. We want to sing something different. You know what I'm saying? And so I remember our music teacher had us sing that song, made us articulate those words and get up there and do different stuff. So I'm just excited and humbled to be a part of this reading and to be part of just this history, especially with Paul Robeson House and all the work that continues to flow through there. And, and that's his connection to Paul Robeson. I had an opportunity to study with 2 gentlemen that were like Paul Robeson singers when I was an undergrad studying classical music. And so it was a really inspiring thing. So all these connections coming together today are just giving me all the tingles and joy. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that inner Chicago knowledge too. That was great. Okay, I think, yep, I'm pretty sure we got everyone that's in the readers bunch. I'm really so excited to sit with this speech. It might not have been in the email. It is something that is available and searchable, so you can look up and read with us. as we get started, I'll post the link into the chat so that you can visit it as well. But without further ado, let's get into the reading. And then we'll end with the song almost, right? You won't be hearing our beautiful voices with it, but we'll end with a song, and we'll bring Nina Simone in to really, pull everything together at the end. So without further ado, Michelle, would you like to get us started?
I certainly would love to. And I want to dedicate this to my kid, Martine. Apart from anything else, I wanted to be able to come here and speak with you this afternoon because you are young, gifted, and Negro. In the month of May, in the year 1964, I, for one, can think of no other dynamic combination that a person might be. You are, after all, the product of a presently insurgent and historically vivacious and heroic culture. A culture with an indomitable will for freedom and an aspiration to dignity.
For even though it is not as well known as it should be, our people have sustained one of the most heroic resistance to tyranny in the history of man. Our African ancestors came to the New World fighting slavery by mutiny on the high seas and by suicide. The character of slavery itself was defined by a Black man's repudiation of his enslavement, which he daily did battle by sabotage, work stoppage, acts of violence against those who enslaved him, and of course, most telling of all, by running away by the thousands from slavery. And when the time came to help give the fatal blow to the slave system, our ancestors, now by the tens of thousands, fell into ranks of Abraham Lincoln's Union Army to serve in any way they could to destroy the hideous cancer against human dignity. And that was the Confederacy. They served as cooks, work battalions, they served as spies, men and women, thousands and thousands of them. But all above, they served as the most determined fighting soldiers to don the Union, blew and stormed the barricades of the rebel camps.
Thank you. Whoa, who's next? Let me make sure. Let me look at my schedule. Okay. Miss Denise, you there?
Okay.
I got you.
And after that war, the Civil War, the Negro people and the poor whites of the South sent their own sons for the first time into the halls of Congress to represent them and create the finest democratic hour the South and this nation have ever known. During the period of the Reconstruction, for example, the free public school system was made available for the first time to the Southland, whereas before, only the children of the rich had been able to enjoy the right to education.
It was against this brief upsurge of democracy for Black and white that the Bourbon South unleashed the Night Rider to take away the ballot from the Negro and thereby from his poor white brother as well. It was against this brief upsurge of equality that slavocrat apologists, historians arose across the land to vilify and defame the Reconstruction and create an image of it that persists to this day. And it was against the threat of the return ever again of such an hour of democracy and opportunity for all that the system of brutality, murder, and economic intimidation we know today became the instrument used to guarantee the disenfranchisement of the Black men and degradation of the white men of the South.
It is this system which prevails that once again shall compel this nation to find better education or be torn asunder once again. But apart from all these things, Apart from this little known and much distorted history of the Negro's 3-century struggle against oppression in the New World, is the fact of his culture, a culture which since the 17th century has thrust forward poets and since the 19th, novelists and journalists. Contrary to the notion of the quiescent intellectuality of the American Black man, is the fact that he first began publishing his newspapers in 1827, while the greatest of his number were yet in chains. He began writing classical verse before America was a nation. More important, the inflected speech and idiom of our people continued to influence an entire nation, as indeed do our ever-replenishing dance and music forms continue to dominate our national arts and entertainment.
And that is why I say that, though it be a thrilling and marvelous thing to be merely young and gifted in such times, it is doubly so, doubly dynamic to be young, gifted, and Black. Look at the work that awaits you. There is a story to be told and retold again until no man can plead his ignorance of the things I have just ripped through in such paltry outline. I suppose what I'm trying to do is to urge you in an opposite direction from the more fashionable attitudes and vogues of our times. There are many who would have you believe that there is something wrong with you as writers if you concern yourselves with anything that I have just put before you. Who would try to persuade you that genuine sophistication lies in the realm of the psychoanalytical novel and absurdist play, drawn not from the world as it is, but from only your own highly internalized and over-distilled notions of that world? I am too young and unwise not to offer advice this afternoon, and I caution you as developing writers away from those seductions.
Language symbols, spoken and written, have permitted man to abstract his awareness of the world and transmit his feelings about it to his fellows. That may be the most extraordinary accomplishment in the universe, for all we know. And even if it is not, it is certainly one of the most wondrous and marvelous things to have happened since our particular group of megatons or whatever either fused or split to make this particular world of ours. And it is certainly too important a gift to waste in not using it to the best of one's ability in behalf of the human race.
Write if you will, but write about the world as it is and as you think it ought to be and must be, if there is to be a world. Write about not only exotic disappointments, but ordinary ones. Write about the sit-ins. Write about the lady who bored you on the airplane. Write about her and how the stars are viewed from the earth. Write about love. Write about hatred, pride, jealousy. In short, write about all the things that men have written about since the beginning of writing and talking, and write to a point. And don't pretend that you are being modern when you can't find what the point and what you have written is. Throw that thing away and start over with honesty. Write hard at it. Care about it. Eschew the unstructured and the undisciplined and the pointless. No matter what anybody tells you, there are cheap evasions of art. And write about our people. Tell their story. Leave the convoluted sex preoccupations to the convoluted. You have something glorious to draw on, begging for attention to use it.
One day, several years ago, Mrs. Rosa Parks refused to move to the back of the bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and gave the whole nation something to talk about. Don't pass it up. Use it. Good luck to you. The nation needs your gifts. Perfect them.
Oh my God, that was amazing. I think I'm tearing up a little bit. Whew. Thank you all for being a part of this reading. We have a surprise, like not even a surprise, but a time to get ourselves together and celebrate and hug. I'm going to play a tune from Nina Simone, which was written in honor of this speech, in honor of her a good girlfriend, Lorraine Hansberry. So let me get this started. Okay. And I don't want this. Get me out of there. Oh God. Okay, we'll figure this out. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Morning.
Okay.
Quite recently, there was an article in the New York Times on Lorraine Hansberry and a play downtown off Broadway called To Be Young, Gifted, and Black, produced by her. And there was a picture of her there. And it was a picture that I have seen many times before. But photography, as you know, has its own way of communicating. It's its own meaning to do. And all I can tell you is that this picture caught hold of me. And in her eyes, this will sound very strange, but not to people who are really hip. She kept trying to tell me something. I was sitting on the bed. And I remember distinctly saying, I would keep looking at the picture and keep looking at the picture. And of course, the memory of being with her many times kept coming, flooding back in my memory. But I said, and I remember inspiration is a very strange thing. Sometimes it just happens like a light. And I remember getting a feeling in my body. And I said, that's it. To be young, gifted, and black. That's all. And sat down at the piano at that moment and made up a tune. And it just flowed out of me. I knew what I wanted to say in essence, but I couldn't get the words together. So I called up my musical director and told him what was on my mind, explained to him a little bit about Lorraine Hansberry because he didn't know her. And he captured the mood, and the song was born less than 2 days later. And that's been less than a month. So I really think that she gave it to me. That's what I mean. To be young, gifted, and black. Oh, what a lovely, precious dream. To be young, gifted, and black. Open your heart. In the whole world, you know, there's a million boys and girls who are young. That's where it's at. You are young, gifted, and black. We must begin to tell our young. There's a world, girl, waiting for you. Yours is the quest that's just begun. So when you're feeling depressed, alienated, and real alone, there's a breakthrough that you should know. To be young, gifted, and black, your soul's inside, don't you forget it. Your soul's inside. Oh.
Wilson Hughes is gone, but he meant the same thing. And you know about Billy, poor Billy. They killed him for the very same thing that you have a party on. You know? They killed her because she smoked pot. Really? They killed her. Now, of course, Lorraine is gone. Enough. People so rude. By the way, this is a black orchid given to me last night. Where were we? Which Jersey City, by the Black Students Council, and I preserved it till tonight so you can see it. Hi. Okay, this is the last one. To be young, gifted and black. Oh, how I long to know the truth. There are times when I look back and I am haunted by my youth. But my joy of today is that we can all be proud to say, to be loved, gifted and black, hey, is where it's at. It's where it's at. It's where it's at.
Man, there's a couple more minutes on that video as well. And I really encourage you all, I just pulled it up from YouTube. I really encourage you all to sit with it with Nina's performance. And there's another version that is recorded that is also a live version. You can listen to the full 9 minutes. It's really special. So we're at the point in the program now where really can just, reopen the floor for reflections from folks who are on the call. And yes, Mama Sandy, we know about that Aretha Franklin version. Also was listening earlier to Donny Hathaway's version of that song. There's a special live recorded version of Donny Hathaway's that I was sitting jamming with earlier. So yes, and I think we might end this call with Aretha Franklin's version. But before we get to that point, I want to just open up the floor for reflections about this experience, about anything that those words or the song, the music brought up for you. And really, just feel free to hop in. I'm going to unmute some folks to hop in if you have anything.
Yeah, Chris, I'd like to mention a couple of things about Lorraine's life and how it interacted with Paul Robeson and the spiritual connection there, I think. Harry Belafonte told us a story when he was in D.C. He said that back in the late 1940s, Paul Robeson was in New York, and he came by to see a play at the American Negro Theater. It was called Juno and the Paycock. And he brought along with him the playwright, the Irish playwright, Sean O'Casey. And performing in the play that evening were aspiring actors Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier, Ruby Dee, and Ozzie Davis. And then around the same time, Lorraine Hansberry, I think she was a senior in high school, and she happened to walk into the school auditorium, and the same play was going on, Sean O'Casey's Juno and the Paycock. And she said that made an incredible impression on her, the power of that play being enacted there. And so now when Lorraine goes to New York and Harlem, and she's in the company of Paul Robeson, later on in her life, she writes A Raisin in the Sun. And who does she bring in to star in the play? Sidney Poitier, Ruby Dee, and Ossie Davis. So, you know, as you go through this life, you know, things that are you're going to come in contact with, people you come in contact with, experiences you come in contact with along this journey, never discount any of them, you know, because at some point in time, those things are going to be very, very important. The other thing I want to mention is we gave one of our Paul Robeson Awards to Rita Moreno. And when she came to DC, she talked about Lorraine Hansberry and Lorraine having her in her play a sign in Sidney Brewstein's window. Rita, you know, had won the Academy Award for playing Anita in West Side Story. But after that, it was almost 7 years before Rita got another substantive role, you know, in a major film. And she says she was stuck in, you know, barefoot Indian princess roles, playing like a universal ethnic person. And she said she even developed a universal ethnic kind of speech pattern. You know, so she said she left the United States and went to London. And she was fully satisfied with, you know, continuing to work there. But Lorraine Hansberry got in touch with her and brought her back to the States to have her in her play, A Sign in Sidney Brewstein's Window. And she said she remained in the U.S. and now, what is she? Academy Award winner, Emmy, Tony, Grammy, and every other award you can get. And who knows if that would have happened if she hadn't been brought to back to the United States by Lorraine. And she spoke about that at length and very emotionally too.
Thank you. Thank you. Sitting with that and the names that you mentioned, it speaks of that generation. There's a book that I was put on to by Jordan T. Camp, who did a lecture at the Robeson House, Mary Helen Washington, The Other Black List, where she looks at the different artists who were in Harlem and involved with different types of activism in the 50s, including, you know, Lorraine, Alice Childress, Julian Mayfield, and the connection that was there. And you can think about like there's another organization that folks must know is the Committee for the Negro in the Arts, of which Paul Robeson sat as a sort of like advisory board member. And the amount of talent, not only talent, but a commitment and sort of like principles that went along with how they engaged in the craft and performance spoke to so much. Mama Sandy, I heard you had something.
Yeah, as a artist, I'm a performing artist and using, you know, storytelling as my platform. I'm wondering how now, you know, we talk about how these wonderful minds were able to get together on community theater and, you know, and other opportunities that they had for expression. I'm wondering now how cuts in budgets and particularly removal of the arts and educational programs and after school, where are our children who are young, gifted, and Black? Where are they going to go now to nourish their art form, to nourish the writing and the theater and the opportunities for them to perform? I'm just, you know, it just saddens me that, you know, those opportunities are not there. So I want to hear what people have to say.
I'll keep it open.
Just,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, Chris, I want to say that Mama Sandy made a good point. And one of the things that you have to remember, Mama Sandy, is that we're at a crossroads in our society in reference to just that. But one of the things that I want to do is to make sure we open the door of the Paul Robeson House to you and others who are interested in coming to share your gifts and talents so that we can continue to make sure our children are exposed to these kinds of things. Now, I was sitting the other day reading something and I thought about it. When I was coming up as a child, you had to take at least 2 to 3 instruments. You had to sing in the choir. You had to perform on stage. And they say that my mother put me in the pulpit when I was 18 months old. You had to do all of these things. And these are the kinds of things that we're not exposing our children to. And so one thing that we do at the Paul Robeson House, we do work with the high school students and some of the elementary schools, and we allow them to have their performances there. We allow them to have their dance activities there. Allow them to have their activities related to voice and other art forms. We had, just before we closed, we had an art show there with Sayre High School. So please feel free to bring these things to the Paul Robeson House. We'll figure out how we're going to do this social distancing later, but I want people to know that you're welcome at the Paul Robeson House.
And that might be a good time to remind folks as well that you can keep in touch with us at the Paul Robeson House and Museum. We are, on YouTube, yes, and we have a Twitter account, Robeson House PHL. We're on Facebook, Paul Robeson House Events. And as well, you can continue to email us at wphlca@gmail.com. And another maybe timely or specific thing I want to offer to Mama Sandy's question is, in Philadelphia specifically, the mayor's budget proposal cuts $4 million that would fund cultural arts and programming out of the budget. And there's been a lot of organizing that is happening across the city, across the arts community, to really refuse that proposal and think through other potential ways that we can not just head to austerity and take away a lot of the sort of like crucial programming that allows our young people to dream, to work on their talents, to work on their gifts. So like, if you're in Philadelphia, if you're local, to reach out to local elected officials. We're in conversation with our local elected officials about what we can do to change that. And there's ongoing budget talks happening around that. So we'll continue to do that in this season. I want to open up the floor, one sort of like maybe for a couple final comments before we go ahead and close out the event for today.
May I?
I'll wait. This guy.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Michelle, and then we're gonna come back to you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I wanted to thank you for this format today. It was great. I appreciate it. And to piggyback on the comments about the importance of the arts, I'm not an artist. I'm a scientist. I'm a physician, in fact, and I work with STEM. But if I hadn't had, I had every opportunity to do music, to participate in all kinds of artistic endeavors as a kid in school. And Martine is not an artist either, per se an artist, but she's a dancer. And my point is this, I did some papers a couple years ago about the importance of things like music education in conjunction with STEM, because it does something to developing brains. We can't let the arts go away. We can't let them not fund an important part of our children's development. So if anybody is beginning a movement, or if anybody needs some help with some to combat these budget cuts, they're draconian. I've read through them. Then I'm in. We can share information and work together on that. I'm a witness as to how important it is to expose children to not only the hard math and science, but also arts.
Yes.
So thank you for this opportunity. I don't know if you had anything more to say.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank
I'm
you.
always putting her on the spot.
Sorry. Tamara, bring us home.
Well, I just also want to say that the arts brings $15 billion to Philadelphia's economy. Not millions, billions of dollars. And the $4 million that they get every year is matched by other art organizations. They have been one of the few organizations actually providing lifelines to artists and art organizations to make it through this time so that we could see the other side. And I want to tell you this it's a famous quote, but I don't remember who said it, but the way that we treat artists is a huge determination of how our society is to function, right? So my daughter, I was also like an engineering major and all that stuff, but I ended up going to musical theater because it was just this very natural thing. The ability to understand Shakespeare, the ability to write, which can never, ever be duplicated by a computer, right? So when I'm an adjunct and I'm teaching writing, you know, a lot of my students are not great writers, not because they couldn't be, but it has a lot to do with the fact that we have severely cut the arts. When I was little and going to little corner school in Chicago that had no money, but you know what we had? We had a piano. You learned how to play the piano. You learned how to read music. You learned how to dance. You learned how to do ballet and tap and all these formal things. And it provided in our community a sense of joy, right? And a sense of encouragement and a sense of life. And I'm telling you, if we come out of this and the first thing we do is cut out art and our artists, then that joy and that amazingness and that passion that is nothing more than Black joy and Black ingenuity at the core of it. Let me be clear, okay? Every song you listen to, including country, is a soup and stew that started with African drums, okay? So because of that, we need to make sure that our children, especially our children, have that, because it's in their DNA. And if we don't let them use it, that's why they run around a circle in class. That's why they jump up and down and can't wait for recess, because they want to move and they want to be seen and they want to be heard. And then we don't have a future. Like, I don't want to be doing this and not knowing that who's coming behind me to take my place on stage is not there and is not ready or prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna share this one thing as an educator, which has increasingly become more and more frightening, because I'm at a charter school, and sometimes people think that there's more freedoms in charter schools, but if those children don't get very much exposure to arts at all, even with the budget we have now. So if it's even more cuts, they'll have absolutely nothing. Writing is focused on test taking skills. Writing is focused on text dependent analysis. Writing is focused on reading someone else's work. It makes me sad. I don't teach writing because I am not a writer on that level. I teach science and social studies, and I do have a bit more freedom than other teachers. But my children can't tell their stories in writing. They don't tell stories. It's all writing, regurgitating information from someone else. So I do think that we have to reach out to our politicians. We have to take our time to volunteer in schools because there's not enough adults in schools too. It's not enough money, it's not enough adults, it's not enough of anything. To make sure they have a way to tell their story, if it's through music, if it's through art, if it's through writing. And I've worked in not many schools. I've only taught in 3 different schools. One school did have a focus on art because of that principle. The other 2 schools' focus was having our kids be, and it was school district schools and charter schools, having our schools be able to write a text to analyze someone else's text that they are not engaged in, not interested in. And there's a time and place for that, but there's a time and place to write for pleasure, to tell your story. And their stories are going unheard.
Chris, I know you want to close out, but can I just say one thing
I think Denise has something too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Denise,
Yeah, thank you. I guess I waited for a minute to get my emotions in place. Just hearing Nina Simone's voice, and every time she said the word Black, how she said it like to the bottom of her soul, just really like took me over. But I just wanted to end by saying that I'm brought to mind of Paul Robeson's saying, talking about the role of the artist, and I think that he and Lorraine exemplify the role of the artist in terms of our forward movement for liberation and human dignity. They both are exemplars for that. But in Lorraine's piece, when she's talking about the nation needs your gift, I like the fact that was part of her message to the young writers, the young people, that you explore your entire boundaries of your creativity. You don't have to put it, confine it to one aspect of life. So I'll end on that.
And what I wanted to say, Chris, as we close out, and we talked about the budget and the arts, and I want to go back to a statement from, well, a quote from one of my favorite writers, that you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. So when we talk about the uprising that we need to do in his arts and budgets cut, we also need to go back to the source, and we need to expose our children to the Hansberries, to the Cullens, to the Davises, to the Beardens, to the Pippins, to the Honeywoods, to the Aretha Franklins, we need to take control, because a lot of them didn't have the luxury of being involved in art programs. So I don't want to leave that, as that now we're in this doom and gloom. What I want us to do is to rise up and take control. That's it.
Yes, yes. And how, I think anytime we do a Paul Robeson House and Museum program, Ms. Vernoka knows this well, we begin from a matter of celebration, but the struggle and the work that we must do is always so close and entangled with our celebration. And I'm almost, I don't know, I talked to Mr. Vernoka about it, imagining that the role of Black art and the role of Black artists, particularly in the time when all these sort of like cuts and things, that could be our next event. I don't know. I'm just saying, throwing that out there, and we could talk about this some more, and getting to have a bit of a debate and talk about what's needed in this moment in terms of Black art. That's what Robeson and Hansberry want to do.
Chris, I want to remind everybody 2 things that we now have to do. We have to participate in the census, because for everybody not participating, that's $22,000 that is taken away from the next 10 years. So we have to participate in the census. We also have to participate in this vote. I don't care how you vote, but you have to participate. Thank you so much. And to everybody who participated and everybody who's listening, thank you so much on behalf of the West Philadelphia Cultural Alliance.
So we are going to close out today. I got some music on in the background. I don't know if you can hear it. Maybe I'll turn it up just a little bit. Mama Sandy brought up Aretha Franklin. And we're going to stop the live stream here. Maybe have a little bit of opportunity to talk with the people who are on the call and just say our gratefulness and thank you. And this is the Paul Robeson House and Museum signing off. And we look forward to continued conversation with you all. Thank you.